Welcome back, everyone, to the Phenomenal Wrestling Podcast. It is July 13th, 2021. With you, as always, are your hosts, Matt and Ryan. Ryan, are you ready to talk about this week in wrestling?
Oh, yeah. We've got a lot to talk about, I feel like.
Well, unfortunately, we're going to have to start on a bit of a sad note because our top story tonight is the injury that Bayley sustained during training this week.
Yeah. It was at the Performance Center, I believe.
Yeah, it wasn't even in a match or anything like that.
Yeah, it was at ACL, I believe. I'm not sure if any details have come out about what happened. But yeah, it looks like she's out for a while, which is a big hit for the WWE because she's been honestly one of the people carrying the company during the pandemic, in my opinion.
Oh, yeah. I mean, as of right now, the details are not clear as to what happened. As far as we know, it's just a training injury. But she's going to be out of action for at least 9 months, seems to be the report. And she has been working a program with Bianca Belair over the SmackDown Women's Championship leading up to a match at Money in the Bank, right?
Yeah, they were going to have an I Quit match. Which...
Perfect match to...
Yeah.
Not the kind of match you want to go into with that kind of injury.
No, definitely not. Definitely not. Yeah, so like you said, 9 months, it looks like.
And it has already been announced that Belair will not defend her title at Money in the Bank now. Instead, she'll be defending her title this Friday against Carmella.
Yes. Well, Carmella, I don't know how to feel about Carmella. I mean, I think Carmella's pivoted fairly well throughout her career, but she doesn't really move the needle for me that much.
I mean, I liked her best when she was with R-Truth. That was my favorite.
Oh, sure. Yeah. That was good. But, yeah, I mean... I'd be shocked if she won against Bianca Belair, but yeah, just the Bayley.
Nah, she's just a placeholder.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, the Bayley is a big loss. 9 months without arguably the top women's heel. That's a tough one. So I SmackDown Bianca's gonna have to really carry. Sasha's gonna have to come back in and carry. So yeah, we'll see. But best wishes to Bayley, obviously.
Yeah, Bayley, whose real name is Pamela Rose Martinez, she started wrestling in 2008 on the independent circuit, and during that time she wrestled under the name Davina Rose. I didn't see many of her matches under Davina Rose, but she seemed to be talented right off the bat. She was getting into some good matches back then, and she signed with the WWE in 2012, and she wrestled her first match wearing a luchador mask before ditching it entirely and going by the name Bayley. I don't know who thought that was a great idea. I've seen the mask. It doesn't look that good. But not long after that, she adopted the fangirl gimmick, which she used throughout the rest of her NXT run before getting called up to the main roster in 2015 and continuing that gimmick there until she turned heel in September of 2019, adopting a new look in the process. Since then, she's been the SmackDown's Women's Champion, as well as the WWE Women's Tag Champion with Sasha Banks. And a lot of people said that her and Sasha Banks' run during the pandemic was one of the best things that WWE was doing at the time.
Yeah, I mean, I would have to agree. That rivalry, I think, it's like the Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn of the women's division. I feel like it's just so.
Yeah, that's a good comparison.
Yeah,
I mean, they've been fighting forever.
Right, they've been fighting forever, and I could just watch them in any match. Really, they have great chemistry together. But yeah, I mean, I remember watching the matches during the pandemic between those two, and they really just carried, especially SmackDown, the SmackDown Women's division. So yeah, I mean, I remember when Bayley was called up to the main roster, and a lot of people were worried about her the hugger gimmick, and obviously she did a great job, and creative did a great job of changing her character to kind of adapt it to what was needed in the division and adapt it to what she could perform, and I think she's done such a great job. So it really is such a shame that this has happened at a time when she was probably working her way back in to some rivalries.
Well, the whole hugger gimmick brings up a pretty important point when it comes to wrestling these days. Now, as I said before, I started watching wrestling fairly recently, more or less starting with WrestleMania 34. So the first time I saw Bayley, she was doing some pretty heelish stuff as she eliminated Sasha Banks at the Battle Royale. And that whole strained relationship with Bayley and Sasha was definitely a running theme throughout my time watching WWE. But more so than that, what stood out was the whole fangirl gimmick that she had. I liked her look. I loved the entrance. And out of anyone there, she was the one who seemed like she would appeal to kids, which is something that wrestling just doesn't do anymore. It doesn't help that a lot of the more kid-friendly guys from the 80s like Hogan turned out to be total jerks in real life, and that the Attitude Era kind of pushed everything up to the teen level, which coincidentally also happened to comic books at the same time with a lot of the same problems. But really, aside from John Cena, is there anyone else in the last 2 decades who really appealed to kids? I mean, you got guys like Roman Reigns who sell a lot of merch. You got monsters like Brock Lesnar, which I hear kids like. But there's no one really aimed at that younger audience anymore, is there?
I would make one argument, and that's Rey Mysterio.
That's actually a really good one. He was I remember he was on all the toys. I used to work at a Kmart for 2 years, and all the WWE toys had Rey Mysterio on it. So he was definitely someone who pushed merchandise in that way. And good for him. He was great at it. But that was also 10, maybe even close to 15 years ago at that point.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great point. I think Rey and John Cena are the two that stick out to me. I mean, you could argue maybe Jeff Hardy, but even he, I think, has probably struck an older audience, even if it was just teenagers or something. So that's a great point. I mean, I think as Rey, when I think of Rey, I think of him making his entrance and headbutting, not headbutting, but going nose to nose with all of the kids at ringside who are wearing his masks. It just seems like he was definitely had a focus on younger kids. I think those are like the two that stick out to me in terms of what you're talking about. And Bayley definitely struck a similar chord, especially in NXT, where there were tons of, especially little girls who were super into Bayley and just super enthused by that character of the, like you said, the fangirl, and just kind of the infectious joy that she brought. So I think it was a really big deal when she turned heel, but I think it turned out for the best.
Yeah, and there's just not many women who can inspire that kind of infectious joy in the little girls, and not even the men's division either, but specifically with Bayley, she was so good at that. And there's no one who can really replace her. Not even Becky Lynch, who was really popular, but she still seemed to be aiming for an older audience.
Yes, definitely, I would agree. She definitely, Bayley, at her babyface best, definitely, I think, established a connection with a piece or a part of the audience that not many people can. I think they definitely lost something when they turned her heel. But I think they maybe gained a more nuanced character, which, I don't know, maybe that's just as important on the main roster.
Yeah, I mean, you don't want to... But I think there's a lot of those kind of people working in the industry right now. But the niche she filled, she's filling a new niche really well, but no one has filled her niche since she left.
Yeah,
I'd argue even the New Day would count, because they definitely have a family-friendly vibe. Yeah. But even they aren't as relevant as they once were, especially since they keep trying to break them up. Well, not exactly break them up, but they keep trying to cycling, Big E's time to shine. Now Kofi Kingston's time to shine and all that.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. It's definitely kind of loses a lot of its impact when they're not all together. I think you're right in terms of nobody has really replaced that niche that was filled with Bayley. And I don't know if there's anybody in NXT who can do that. I mean, I think it's weird because I think someone like Nikki Cross could definitely do that. They just are sending her in such a weird direction. Obviously, we've talked about that.
Well, they're not taking her seriously. They're treating her like a joke, where even Bayley as a hugger wasn't a joke.
She was a great wrestler, and she had an intensity. Not that Nikki Cross isn't a great wrestler, but they don't let her showcase it as much as they would let Bayley. So, I think there was an intensity with Bayley in matches where even though she was, this giddy, joyous character, she would, kind of turn it on for matches. So she was able to kind of strike that balance between, that infectious joy like we've mentioned, and then also that fierce competitor. So she really did fill a niche that hasn't been filled since. And I wonder if there's anybody coming up. I wonder if there's anybody on the roster who can kind of fill that. And I don't know. That would take even more examination, I think.
The only other group I can think of, and this is probably stretching it a little bit, is Orange Cassidy and the Best Friends. I think kids are gravitating to them more than a lot of other people in the business, especially look in the crowds, and a lot of them are either wearing the shirts or doing the Orange Cassidy gimmick. And, Chris Statlander, she's not Bayley, but I think with her mixed into the group, you do have something there. that maybe could fill that niche, but there's still a huge opening there for someone to take. There's a need that needs to be filled, but it's not being filled at this time.
Yeah, I know. I think that's a great shout. I think they're a group that could definitely appeal, especially if AEW went more that direction with them. Could definitely appeal to a similar kind of fan base or portion of the fan base. Yeah, Orange Cassidy is a really good shout. I think he kind of holds a special place in the wrestling industry for sure.
Well, all the best to Bayley, and we can't wait to see her come
Yeah,
back, no matter what gimmick she has. But
absolutely.
from there, we're just going to go ahead and move on to AEW Dynamite from July 7th, 2021. Now, before we actually get started on the show, I, of course, have a few thoughts here. We need to talk about the crowd. For the most part, they were good, and they definitely added something to the bigger moments here. Cody getting the win, Hangman making the save, all definitely gave the episode a little more flavor than it had during the empty arena months. That being said, it seems that not everyone is ready for crowds to be back, and some in the crowd forgot to act like civilized people. The most egregious moment that everyone has already talked about is when that guy tries to run in during the Jericho and MJF segment.
Yeah.
Oh my god. During Judas, the Jericho song, some self-centered, obnoxious Jack person, I probably shouldn't be swearing, thought he'd be a real cool dude if he ran into the ring. I thought he was there to jump MGF or something, but some of the footage from the fans who were there show the guy just kind of posing on the ramp, which is still an obnoxious thing to do. The camera guys actually, thankfully, they cut away from the dude, so you barely get to see him and deny him his glory moment, though he does eat a knuckle sandwich from Jericho, which he looked pretty mad, all things considered.
Yeah, I can't imagine. I mean, anytime anybody steps in the ring, like a fan steps in the ring with a wrestler, it never, ever ends well, ever. So, yeah, that makes sense
And
to
it's
me.
definitely the worst moment, but there were other stuff that just didn't click well, and maybe it's more me than anything else, but some of the stuff didn't sit well. The crowd was chanting Y2J, which I didn't think was a problem, but Jericho felt the need to shut it down immediately, and that just that sapped a little bit of something out of there. Then the crowd starts chanting F his mom after Jericho made a joke about having sex with MJF's mother. Real classy there.
Yeah.
And there are some
Right.
more F-bombs in the main event when they chant "You effed up" at Brandon Cutler. I don't know. Maybe I'm just too used to the pandemic era where there was a bit of control there, but it just seems that there's a bit more rowdiness than there needs to be. There was one segment where the rowdiness wasn't a big distraction. Well, it was a little bit, but they compensated for it. It was when Callis and Omega were in the ring. They started chanting, "You got fired," and Callis said, "You know what? Real men don't get fired; they quit." That kind of added to it. And, Omega has some fun stuff with the crowd there. So they seem prepared for the crowd. They have a bit more connection with them, and they seem to be able to steer them in a better direction. So maybe that's just what it's going to take. It's going to take a few weeks for the wrestlers to get used to that kind of mentality again. Maybe a few weeks for the crowd to not act like screaming jerks a lot of the time. But what do you think? Am I overthinking this too much?
No, definitely not. I mean, I think it's going to be a process for both the fans and the performers, right? I mean, it's been such an unprecedented time where performers have been, wrestling in front of empty crowds or at least small crowds, and the crowds just, you haven't been to a wrestling show in a while, so, you look forward to it all week. You go, you shout, you scream, you then I don't know. I feel like it'll even out. It'll normalize after a few shows. But I totally get what you mean. It feels like it's maybe some people's first time out
Yeah.
in a year and a half, and they just kind of went buck wild. And so I think it'll normalize, and I think especially if it's someone's first show, they're going to be rowdy, or their first time seeing AEW. They'll be a little out of control. But like you said, I think certain performers are ready for it. I mean, Don Callis and Kenny Omega are pros, so they're ready to go. That's why it's surprising that Jericho was so keen on kind of shutting the crowd down, like you mentioned. It was surprising, like a veteran performer like Jericho did that in such a way that wasn't like fun, really.
Don Callis seems like a guy who gets heckled on the street anyway, so I think he's used to it.
Yes, I think he's definitely used to it. Yeah, he was in the original ECW,
Yeah.
so he's definitely well accustomed to that.
Well, now that we got that off our chest, let's go ahead and get into the show. First match is Cody Rhodes versus QT Marshall in a South Beach strap match.
Yeah.
The match was interesting, if nothing else. I've heard of this kind of strap match before, but it always seemed overly convoluted to have them try and tap all four corners. And honestly, the rules weren't as well explained for a new person as they should be. And it's a weird thing. Like, what are you trying to prove with that? Like, just proving that you're able to touch four corners? Because, it's different. I mean, people have similar opinions when it comes to, like, ladder matches and table matches. You didn't prove anything. You just proved that you put a guy through a table. And this one seems a little bit less involved in, like, the actual wrestling skill than that. But, even over time, the match did come into its own. There was a little bit I can see, like, one area where the strategy works where you have to decide, do you want to stop them when they're at post 2, or do you want to strengthen your defenses at post 4? There's a little bit of strategy there, I guess, but overall, this is more just like a regular strap match with just a weird way to finish it.
Yeah, I've seen this type of match before. I guess it was just in WWE, but yeah, it is a little bit convoluted, and I think if they tried to play up that strategy more, I guess the whole point is just to, like most matches, right, just to incapacitate your opponent to the point where, you can easily hit all four, which is how this match ended.
Yeah, it's in that way, it's kind of close to a last man standing match.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's just the same, a different variation on the same concept. I mean, which is like pretty much all wrestling is, right? So, I actually like this a lot better than I thought I would.
Okay.
I'm not the biggest Cody fan in his current kind of character but you gotta admit that the crowd was hot for this.
It was a great match to start off with. Like, you gotta get Cody out there up front.
Exactly. So I think as much as I don't love Cody as a babyface, especially since he's one of the vice presidents of the company, and I don't know, I always root against that. You got to admit that he got a good reaction, and so maybe Cody Rhodes knows a little bit more about wrestling than I do. I'm not sure.
In any other circumstance, QT would be the babyface. He is the one who is fighting from underneath the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
And they're both really good wrestlers. QT will always surprise you with how good he is in the ring. The only thing that what's also a double-edged sword in this is the strap itself. There were some fun spots where Cody pulls the rope and QT bounces off the ring ropes. That was fun, but it's so long and so unwieldy that I was terrified in a lot of spots in here that it may just wrap around someone's neck. And there was that one part where Cody took a suplex, and he was caught up in the straps during it, so it looked like it threw off his balance, and then he wrecked his shoulder, which at the time I thought might have been a legit injury, but I think it was just a work. But I don't like being scared like that when I'm watching a match.
No, definitely not. I mean, yeah, you definitely don't want to think that the performers are in actual danger. So I totally get what you mean, where it's just like, oh, just shorten the rope or something. Like it's just like there's something off where it just gives you a kind of an uneasy feeling. That's interesting though. Yeah, I didn't have the exact feeling, but I think it's a totally valid thing where it's just like you see a rope and a long rope and these guys getting tangled up in it and
someone does the wrong jump and it yanks in the wrong way. I mean, we've all saw the Disney Tarzan movie, right?
Yes,
yeah.
Right. Yes, definitely. So I totally get that. But yeah, I mean, three consecutive crossroads. And then,
definitely, yeah.
Touching all four pads. I like that was a decisive win instead of, it's down to the last turnbuckle or whatever.
And was there any doubt Cody was going to win that?
No.
Like, even earlier in the match, I mean, he was in control the entire time. The only time QT even got a word in edgewise was when Aaron Solo runs in.
Right.
Which, if it's DQ, why doesn't everyone at all times run in? But, that's the kind of questions you're not supposed to ask.
Exactly.
QT gets a good cutter at one point, almost gets all four corners, but then Cody starts yanking on the rope, and the arbitrary what's an interruption thing comes in at that point.
Right.
And then Cody does his power-up, like, roar! And then he tacks him all over the place, 3 Cody cutters, and gets all four corners. Decisive victory. A good match, like... In hindsight, it's better than when it was watching it because I could not relax with that rope all over the
Yep.
place, but it was still, these two guys are really good at what they do.
Yes, 100%. Yeah, it was just two pros putting on a solid match to kind of get the show fired up.
From there, we cut to Shawn Spears, who is smugly bragging about being a spoiler in Sammy's match last week. I really like Shawn Spears when he's smug and smarmy and stuff like that. But then he gets hit over the head with a chair. And, Sammy shows up and is just kind of sitting there like, yeah, what are you going to do now? And then we just cut. Is Sammy still just staring at the corpse of Shawn Spears?
Calmly walks away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, no, he took a seat. He sat down, did the whole
Right.
reverse chair thing because he's cool.
Right.
And then he's
Yes.
just sitting there looking at Shawn as we cut.
Right.
The Pinnacle is
Yeah.
going to have a very interesting night tonight, which we'll get to eventually.
Yes, definitely.
And then after that, we have Tony Schiavone, who calls out Kenny Omega and Don Callis to the ring. The latter of whom wasn't here last week, so it's his turn to heel out on everyone and proclaim that Kenny has won all of the belts and all of the matches. And when he took the microphone from Tony Schiavone, he looked so sad.
I love Don Callis. I really do.
Yeah, and Tony Schiavone is a very good sad sack. He was doing great work with Britt Baker, and just here when he grabbed the microphone, it was like, "Aww,
Yes,
why do
for
that,
sure.
Don?" That's just
Right.
But then, just like last week, the Dark Order come out with Evil Uno in front and holding a microphone, where he demands an answer from Kenny as to why he's been avoiding Hangman Adam Page. Instead, he asks Uno what the capital of Thailand is. The answer? Kenny gives Uno a swift kick to the Joy Department before shouting, "It's Bangkok, baby!" I can't say I've ever heard that one before, and I kind of just want to give a slow clap out of respect.
Yeah.
But the whole situation devolves immediately after that as the Dark Order rushes the ring and are swiftly overtaken by Kenny, Nakazawa, and the Good Brothers, who are all over the place in this episode. And then finally, the Hangman rushes out and makes a save and clears the ring of everyone but Omega. And in an allusion to the 2020 Revolution pay-per-view, Hangman is on the apron, facing Kenny Omega, and it's clear that he's contemplating the Buckshot Lariat. The last time he did this, it was after they won the titles against the Young Bucks, and just like last time, he decides not to do it. Back then, he wasn't quite in his fully heel yet. He was going to go heel at that point, but he decided not to do it. Here, I think he's still a little bit afraid of Kenny.
Yeah, I think that's the story. We're afraid of at least what giving Kenny a buckshot lariat would mean, in terms of he seems like someone at this point who's a little bit of afraid of success, and that the kind of anxiety that brings, which I think is a great character trait in a wrestler. You think of all the wrestlers who are so larger than life and confident beyond belief, and then you've got the millennial anxious cowboy. So it's a nice way to separate Hangman Page, and it really makes you kind of empathize with him. And when he does hit that buckshot lariat,
it's going to be so sweet.
The reaction's going to be unreal.
Yeah. I do kind of wish he said at least something here, but I guess they want to stretch it out a bit. So he doesn't say anything to Omega, or at least anything that we can hear. And eventually Omega and the Good Brothers just kind of, run out of there. This was a fantastic promo. The Kenny Omega and Hangman stuff has been fantastic in the last 2 weeks, and I only hope it gets better from here.
Yeah. Oh, I think it will. I think these two are going to be money together. I really do.
After that, we get an interesting interview with JR talking to both Ethan Page and Darby Allin about where this feud even came from and why it has to be resolved in a coffin match. Now, I love the setup of JR being the stern father figure trying to walk these kids into getting over their own nonsense, but I don't think they quite hit the mark here. Do you?
I actually really liked Ethan Page here. I loved the idea that he kind of brought Darby Allin into... Now, I don't know how much of this is actual fact.
Yeah.
But, that he brought Darby Allin into the industry and is going to take him out of it. I just like that kind of concept. I don't know if they nailed every single aspect of it, but I think that main concept they kind of drilled home, for me at least. So I thought it was a bit successful. What'd you think?
I was kind of bothered by Darby Allin. His explanation here was pretty cold-blooded. and he starts talking about how I was homeless and sleeping in my car to devote myself fully to this business while you had a family. Ugh.
Right. Yeah, right.
It's a bit weird to talk down to someone when they're like a family man. I mean, what was it? Heath Slater spent like 10 years doing the "I'm a dad" thing.
Yeah, right.
Ethan Page, like it's a weird thing for Ethan to have on Ethan Page. I didn't even know he had kids.
I didn't either.
Like,
yeah, it almost instantly makes him more sympathetic in a way.
Which is not exactly what you want out of this
No.
kind of storyline. But by the end, Ethan Page heals out a bit, which kind of recalibrates things. But it's been like this for a few weeks where baby faces have given oddly heelish promos. We had Christian Cage a few weeks ago telling Jungle Boy to give in to the dark side. And now we have Darby Allin saying, well, of course you're not a success. You have a life.
Yeah, right. Yeah, yeah, that aspect actually is interesting and didn't really hit for me. I think Ethan Page definitely saved this from being a waste of time, I would say.
And so did JR. He was actually really good in this. He's a guy who doesn't. He can have a few gaffes here and there, but he's also not going to say something silly.
No.
He is going to actually say something meaningful when he gets the chance. And he brought something to this interview. He got something out of these two guys who could have just been shouting at each other the whole time.
No, definitely. I mean, he's been doing this for how long? So he knows how to build a story almost as much as any of the greats, any of the wrestlers do. So, yeah, definitely props to JR on this one. I think he did a great job.
After that, we had Proud and Powerful and Jake Hager versus FTR and Wardlow in a trios match. Proud and Powerful accompanied to the ring by Conan, while FTR is accompanied by Tully Blanchard. I've mentioned, I think even on this podcast, that I feel Eddie Kingston to be the true successor to Dusty's American Dream gimmick. But right behind him were Santana and Ortiz, who wear their authentic American roots right on their sleeves and have the wrestling skills as well as the charisma to pull it off. The only thing that's been kind of holding them back is that they were heels and they didn't really lean into it that much. But now that they're baby faces, it feels like that's the direction they're going in, especially with Conan. His promo the other week was really good and kind of pushed them in that direction.
That's a really good call. I think there are big things coming for Proud and Powerful. I mean, I don't think that's a shock to anybody, but yeah, they just really do wear their hearts on their sleeves, and they're really easy to root for. What'd you think of this match overall?
So, okay.
Yeah.
You ready for another rant here?
Absolutely.
Okay. What is the deal with the Pinnacle? They are supposed to be opponents for the Inner Circle, but especially in this match, like we saw it earlier with Shawn Spears, but especially in this match, they're kind of treated as jokes. Like, FDR has always felt a little bit out of place here. They haven't felt like they meshed as well as, Shawn Spears, Wardlow, and MJF.
Yeah.
And here, like, they're great wrestlers. They give a great match here, but they get almost nothing in this. It is all Proud and Powerful the entire time. Even Jake Hager, whose entire thing seems to be, I'm big and strong, but I'm also kind of an awkward mess. He is running wild over these two. And so FDR just doesn't get a lot of momentum here. And to kind of jump ahead, MJF in a later segment, he doesn't get any momentum out of that either. He doesn't end that segment looking strong or anything. It's all about Jericho. And in this match, it's all about Proud and Powerful. And in the segment earlier, it was all about Sammy because he beat the crap out of Shawn Spears. So we have this team full of super talented guys, and some of them do stand out a little bit more than the others, but it doesn't feel like they have grown or become better than the sum of their parts. Like the Inner Circle. Like, if the Inner Circle guys were all on their own, especially someone like Jake Hager, he probably wouldn't be in anywhere near as good a position as he is now. While FTR, on the other hand, they were devious. They were smart. They were the tag team champions. They just barely lost them. They were the best wrestling team of all time, and people wanted to see them more than ever. I don't feel that way about them at this particular time, and especially after seeing this match.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I mean, I think it seems like when you compare the Inner Circle and the Pinnacle, like the Inner Circle, I feel like organically, or it just made sense that they all came together. It just seems like the Pinnacle was thrown together very obviously to just be a foil for the Inner Circle, So, yeah, they don't mesh in the same way that the Inner Circle has meshed over the months. I don't know what that's a failure of, but I think you nailed it. I mean, it just definitely seems like they are not greater than the sum of their parts for sure. So I don't know if that's something that they can fix easily, but at the end of the day, if it's just about, AEW is a lot about wins and losses, right? So FTR do get the win, but I don't know how impressive they were impressive in terms of their performance, but yeah, there's just something off about the Pinnacle that I think you articulated very well.
And they got the win, but it was in a pretty Weasley way, and
Oh, for
B,
sure.
they had already lost as far as the audience was concerned when Jake Hager tapped, what was it, Cash Wheeler? Like, Cash Wheeler tapped out, and we all saw it.
Right.
So, I mean, as far as the match, FTR and Proud and Powerful, they do a lot of good stuff back and forth. The only one who actually looks really good on their side is Wardlow. He looks really good when he comes in. But FTR just keep getting their butt kicked, and it's not until Tully jumps on the apron and distracts the ref that they actually get some sort of advantage. FTR run in and land a big rig on Hager, and, despite completely running away with this fight, that one move is enough to knock out Hager so that Wardlow can get the pin and win the match. After that, we have Conan, who didn't really do much before now. He tried to hit Wardlow over the back of the head with a sock full of ball bearings or whatever, and the dude sells it like he got stung by a bee.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
So Wardlow looks good. He comes out of this looking fantastic.
Yeah. I've been impressed with Wardlow lately.
And even Tully. Tully came in and he did, what had to have been the softest chop block of all time, but he still did it on Conan. And, they start quote-unquote beating up Conan before Proud and Powerful chase him off. So the Inner Circle look like total champs here despite not winning the match. And yeah, FTR just feels awkwardly sandwiched into this feud.
Yeah, I think they definitely are. I think they need some new direction. I don't know what it is. I mean, I don't think they're going to take the titles off the Bucks or anything, but they need something fresh to kind of reestablish themselves as, the best tag team in the world, if that's what they want to be.
Do you think they could do any feuds now in the middle of this, or would that be too much of a distraction from the Inner Circle?
I think it'd be too much of a distraction. I think they just have to end this. the big
6 months.
Yeah. I mean, it's just time so everybody can do something fresh. I'm wondering if that will be, what's the next one? All Out? Is that the big one?
Probably. Yeah.
I think they've got to do something soon.
Yeah, it's in Chicago or something.
I think. So yeah, I think that could be the big blow off. Hopefully, they've had like 2 already.
We're probably going to get the Jericho MJF match at the
yes,
pay-per-view.
I would imagine so.
Yeah,
I would imagine so.
Well, after that, we get a video where Carl Anderson challenges Jon Moxley to the IWGP United States title, which is happening next week. I mean, Jon Moxley isn't injured or anything. He's just spending time with his family, so of course they can just grab him and have him do stuff. But this seemed to come out of nowhere.
Yeah, I mean, obviously Carl Anderson has his history in Japan, in New Japan. So I do like that they're kind of playing off of that. I think this will be a good match. I like Carl Anderson a lot. Not so much the fact that he runs into every elite match there is, but just as a wrestler, I think he's pretty solid. So I'm excited for these two to hopefully have a nice stiff match. That would be ideal.
Yeah, I mean, nothing is going to make this crowd grow cold on Jon Moxley, but, why tempt fate?
No.
Just get him out there every once in a while.
Yeah, exactly. I would agree.
After that, we have the MJF and Jericho contract signing. As we said earlier, during Jericho's entrance, some dude comes into the ring, total jerk. MJF tries to play along and dares another white trash hick to run in and take their shot. I understand why he did it, but don't encourage this, even in character.
Yeah, seriously. Especially if they sell alcohol at the event. That doesn't lead to great decisions. So, I definitely I'll do that.
As far as the contract signing itself, they got the giant table, of course, right in the middle of the ring. And MJF is doing his best to rattle Jericho, who isn't taking any of the bait, which only gets MJF more agitated. Seeing how little his attempts are working, he finally lays down his ultimatum, which is that Jericho has to face 4 opponents of his choosing in stipulation matches. And if he can win all 4 of them, then he will finally face MJF as the 5th challenge. Not a bad idea. It doesn't have the what would you call it, sadistic nature of MJF's whipping challenge when he did pretty much the same thing with Cody. But it is going to be 5 excellent matches. I can only assume those are going to be great.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's a creative way to show that MJF maybe is a little afraid of Jericho, or at least just wants to see him beaten down before he takes him on. I think it's a good way to establish, MJF's, as if he needs it, heel credibility. But yeah, I'm excited to see some good Jericho matches.
And after Jericho agrees, so he doesn't even wait for a second. He's just, fine, I'll do it, whatever. And MJF insists that they shake hands before the deal is on, which I don't know why he demanded that, because as soon as he shook hands, he ate a Judas effect. Like, did Jericho just beat him to the punch? It seems like a weird thing for MJF to insist on and then eat just a hit like that. Like, you kind of need to build up MJF at this point.
Yeah, it's, I mean, maybe it's trying to establish Jericho as the wily veteran who knows better, but it was kind of a strange ending to it. I don't know what MJF's game plan was, other than, like, to try to show Jericho up by being like, shake my hand, like as a kiss my ring kind of thing. I don't know. Who knows? But yeah, it was kind of a strange ending to this segment, but
if he really wanted to do something, he would have done the Vince McMahon kiss my butt thing.
Oh, exactly.
I'm just saying.
Exactly. Yeah. That would have been something. That would have been quite the page to take out of WWE's book for sure.
We cut to Tony Schiavone in the back, who's interviewing Britt Baker about her match last week. Now, neither of us caught this, at least when we were recording the podcast. What was it? Rebel, not Reba, got a dislocated knee towards the end of the match, which is perhaps why the ending didn't make a lot of sense. And Baker's doing the best she can to spin this in a way so that she looks like the bad guy still, and it's not really working. It didn't really work back then. If I recall correctly, it was right when Rebel broke up the pin, and you see Nyla kind of dragging her out of the ring. I just thought it was Nyla just taking her out of action, but she was actually trying to get her out so she could see a doctor. And we saw what happened next with the beast bomb into the table. And again, it's hard to sell that as anything but a heel, but Baker's doing her best here.
Yeah.
But it still doesn't feel like Rose is going into this match with any heat or any babyface charisma or anything like that. We're just expecting Britt Baker to win on this. I'm not feeling much of this match. How about you?
I'm about the same. I would be blown away if it was anything other than a Britt Baker win. Which, there are obviously some matches like that. I mean, we talked about, like Bianca Carmella earlier, which is, we would be shocked if it was anything other than a Bianca win. But, you still have to put people in the challenge in the champion's way, and like you said, it seemed like they improv'd a lot of last week, so I think they're just trying to pick up the pieces and deal with what the cards they were kind of dealt. So yeah, I can't fault them, obviously, but it definitely seems like there's not a ton of heat for this match, but we'll see. Who knows? Maybe
is AEW using this time to build up a proper challenger though? Do we feel that anyone on the roster is going to be her next big opponent?
No, that's the thing. They really need to get started doing that. Because I just looking at the roster, like, who could possibly take down Britt Baker right now? It seems like no one realistically is being built up.
You got Chris Statlander, who's on a winning streak. Penelope Ford, who's got a heel thing still going, so she could be a heel in that.
Yeah.
Sheeta's out of the picture. I don't know where she is.
Right.
So is Tay Conti. Tay Conti got a whole lot of momentum, and she's just not there. Was she? No, it was Anna Jay who was injured, right? I don't think Tay was injured too.
I don't think Tay Conti was injured. No.
Could be wrong, though. Yeah. It's not gonna be the best run for Baker if they don't have opponents for her. That's all I'm saying.
Right. Yeah, they gotta get started on that for sure.
After that, we have an Andrade El Idolo versus Matt Sydal, who we learn is the number 5 contender. Lies! I am calling it. That is a lie. If he was the number 5 contender, wouldn't he have more than one match win on Dynamite in the last year and a half?
Yeah, something seems off about that for sure. Yeah.
I can understand at least sometimes he put a guy in who they say, oh, he won a bunch of matches on Dark, but it feels like every time they bring up the ranking, it's always padded by Dark matches.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I guess that's just their way of trying to make Dark seem more important, right? So, I get why they're doing it, but yeah, it does seem kind of like, for people who just watch Dynamite, they're like, why is this guy the 5th in line? So I totally get that.
Well, he's certainly not the fifth in line after this.
No.
Now, this match was a much better example of what they were trying to do with the Pinnacle all night. Andrade does give up a lot to Sydal, but he never gives up so much that Sydal is making him look incompetent. So you got a good match here where the two guys are competitive without one side looking any worse for wear at the end of it. Andrade, okay, so here's something I noticed in the match. Andrade, I never really thought of him, but he's a big guy, isn't he?
Yeah, he's definitely I think he's gotten bigger since he got released, honestly, from WWE. But yeah, he is a pretty big guy now.
I mean, when I was watching WWE, I always kind of saw him as, the evil luchador. He was doing fantastic moves and all that stuff. So, and when you think luchador, you usually think smaller guys. But in this match, he definitely plays a lot bigger than I expected him to, especially against such a high-flying guy like Sydal.
Yeah, I think he definitely took on the heavy role in this match. I guess it'll depend on who he's facing off against. Like if he goes up against Miro, I'm sure obviously he'll take
He'll somehow be the smaller one in that match.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I think against Matt Sydal, he did a good job of being kind of the heavy.
And he does do a few, cool moves. He does the double moonsault thing.
Yeah, I love that move.
Yeah, and eventually Sydal lands a meteor on him from the top rope, which gets him a 2 count. But after he gets thrown into the corner by Andrade with a few running knees to the corner, he gives him his finisher. He calls it the El Idolo. I'm not sure exactly what it is exactly. It kind of looks like a DDT while holding his opponent in a hammerlock.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what it is. I think it's a hammerlock DDT.
Okay, well, whatever it is, it was enough for him to get the pin and win his first match at AEW. He's also not done with Sydal as he takes off his belt and uses it to put him in a very rough-looking submission hold.
Yeah,
probably not the best part of the match, but like my favorite spot here was when Ref Remsburg manages to break it up. But Andrade gives him such a terrifying look that Remsburg runs out of that ring faster than anyone I've ever seen. He slips out of there so fast and so elegantly that it was like the ring was made of ice and his pants were covered in bacon grease. I have never seen such a smooth escape before.
It was really nice. Yeah, I do distinctly recall that.
Remsburg, he's such a great ref. I love that guy.
Yeah, he's great.
He brings... I saw this match he did with Invisible Stan versus the Invisible Man, where it was all him just overselling everything and acting, and he was so good at it.
I'll have to check that out. I don't think I've ever seen that.
Oh, yeah, it's great, because he's, doing the, oh, and then, bouncing back, and, is he going up the stairs? All that stuff. It was fantastic. And he had they even added a thing where he had to wear invisibility goggles, which is just regular goggles, so that he could see the Invisible Man and Invisible Stan.
I love that. That sounds great. I know what I'm watching tonight.
But as far as this match, Andrade, he won his first match. He's establishing some heel credibility. Let's see what else he can do.
Yeah. I think, hopefully it's just the start of a big run for Andrade. What do you think of the crowd during this match? I feel like they weren't as into it as I would have expected. But maybe I'm just overhyping Andrade and his draw. I don't know.
I can't say for sure. Maybe they were a little bit like me. They weren't expecting a heavy match. They were expecting a bit more flippy stuff. Maybe that was it, or maybe they just weren't into it that much. But they were a little mute on it, and I was a little bit mute on it as well. Just because he wasn't he does that one move, that show off move where he flips and is laying horizontal between two of the ropes. I want to see that.
That was a great spot. I love that spot. But hopefully it's just it's the start of much to come for Andrade.
He's just starting.
First match, yeah.
Christian Cage and Matt Hardy have a video there. They've been going back and forth since the pay-per-view, and they finally announced a match to settle this animosity between them. If it was up to me, they scheduled it for next week, and if it was up to me, I would have given them at least 1 week of in-ring build-up.
Yep. So
that the two can square off. But I am interested in seeing the match anyway. I prefer there to be a little bit more of a build, especially with the implication of there being such a strong blood feud between them. I wasn't there in the early 2000s. I don't know the feud they have between them. I think maybe there was a girlfriend situation a long, long time ago. I need a bit more than just you remember what you did. That's 2010 TNA talk right there.
Sure, I get that. It's kind of banking off of their WWE history. Yeah, I agree. I think they could have used another week to really just drive this rivalry home. build up more than just what they did on this edition. So I definitely agree with you. That they needed maybe just one more week, or at least just a little more time in general.
Not sure about the name. When I think of Malachi, I think of either an Amish farmer or a lead guitarist in a death metal band.
Yeah.
But in any case, Malachi Black is the former Aleister Black from WWE. One of the most definitive examples of the main roster having no idea what to do with an astoundingly talented wrestler who comes up from NXT.
Yeah.
I can't say I love the name change, but I can't wait to see this guy in the ring.
He's one of my favorites. I mean, yeah, it's kind of surprising that he didn't go back to Tommy End. They mentioned Tommy End, but it seems like he was really into the character that he was going to do, or at least the character pivot that he was going to do right before he got released from WWE. So he seems really into that character. So I'd rather him do something that he's really into than just go back to Tommy End, which maybe was old ground for him, old news for him. So I'm excited. Yeah, the name is definitely interesting, but I'm on board with it. I can't wait to see what he does.
I mean, you know what? Next week, Andrade versus Malachi Black.
Make it happen. Let's do it. Let's just make it happen. What are we waiting for?
Did they ever have a match at WWE?
Oh yeah. Oh, they had a great feud in NXT. Yeah.
Oh well, there you go. That's an even more reason to do it.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it was, and Zelina Vega was involved as Andrade's manager, obviously. So it was definitely a lot of fun. They put on a great match at a takeover. I can't remember which takeover it was, but they put on a great match.
So after that, we get this. This is a little bit weird, and maybe something we should expect going forward now that they're back on the road. This was a pre-taped in-ring segment with Ricky Starks and Team Taz. It was a little. The editing was a bit much. They edited after pretty much every sentence, and so you never felt like you got like a Cliff Notes version of it. So it didn't really feel complete. But basically, Ricky Starks is getting a little bit big for his britches, even for Taz's taste, and he starts going after. He starts talking bad about Brian Cage's wife, and they almost fight in the ring. You know, Brian Cage takes out a few security dudes, and that's about it. They have their match next week. I would have preferred to see this live and unedited, but I guess they were running out of time or something like that.
Yeah, I don't know what this was. I kind of feel the same way, where I'm like, it was just kind of jarring, and I wasn't super into it. But I'm still into the Team Taz kind of blow up. But yeah, this was a bit strange to me for sure.
Was Taz looking a little sympathetic here?
I think so. Yeah, I would say so. I think he, his character is starting to worry, I think, a little bit, and it's hard not to feel for someone like that, I guess, even if you don't exactly want to or think you shouldn't.
Yeah, but I would rather them just, like, maybe this is a setup. I'm hoping this is a setup, kind of like when the Bucks were blowing off the Good Brothers before finally joining with them.
Right.
I hope that Taz eventually cements his approval of Ricky Starks and disowns Brian Cage in a very violent and heelish manner. That's how I'm hoping this goes, but perhaps I have a better idea than I do.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the way they should go. I think that makes a lot of sense to me. I definitely think the rest of Team Taz should unite against Brian Cage, because it makes Brian Cage look strong and also makes Team Taz look formidable and united, so it makes sense to me.
After that, we have Chris Statlander and Orange Cassidy versus the Bunny and the Blade in a mixed tag match. Now, despite what we saw in the Jericho Cruise a few years back, AEW is not about to show genuine intergender wrestling on this show, so it's following the WWE rules. Men can fight men and women can fight women. When one person tags out, the other person has to come in. This is a little bit of a bummer for me, because I do like the intergender matches when they're done right, but I think Statlander finds a few ways to keep it interesting using those rules to her advantage.
Oh yeah, I think Statlander really stood out to me here. I think a lot of people kind of view, it's weird because a lot of people view Chris Statlander as like a throw-in for the best friends. I don't think that's fair at all. I think she definitely can hold her own, and I think she did a really good job in this match.
She definitely, this isn't scientific or anything, but she definitely has a similar vibe to the rest of the best friends, so I think she does fit in pretty easily.
Yeah, I definitely agree.
And even if you are into intergender wrestling, they are a little bit lax here. Ref Aubrey gives a little bit of distance, a little bit of space here, constantly teasing that. Chris Statlander gets a few hits in on the Blade. The Blade tries to take a swing at her a few times. And as I said, what makes this match interesting is that Chris Statlander is using those rules to her advantage. The most prominent moment was probably when the Blade had attacked Orange Cassidy outside the ring, and so the Bunny tags the Blade in, and so Orange Cassidy is outside there. So it's like, oh no, if Orange Cassidy doesn't get in by the 10 count, it's going to be called off. But so what Chris Statlander does is that she antagonizes the Blade so that it gives Orange Cassidy a bit of time to get back in the ring and retake the advantage.
Yeah, I thought that was there was just some cool psychology in this match. I thought, this isn't a match that I went into the night being like, oh, I'm really excited for this one. But I don't know. I think it did a great job of kind of teasing that kind of thing, like you mentioned. But yeah, there's some cool psychology in this match. I was more of a fan than I thought I would be.
And what ends up happening is that the Blade is kind of down. And Orange Cassidy wants to finish him off, but he gets hit by the Bunny, I think, and so Chris Statlander jumps up on the top rope and lands a 451 splash on the Blade. Again, I'm not sure if that's legal. I don't think she was the legal person at that point, but hey, Ref Aubrey doesn't say anything about it. Why should I?
Yeah, that's right.
And there was a whole thing with a pair of brass knuckles. That seems to be Blade's new thing. He doesn't use a blade, he uses knuckles. He should be renamed to the Knuckle.
That's right, the Knuckle. I think next week you'll see the Knuckle. The Knuckle make his repackaged debut.
He actually ends up bashing Cassidy over the head with it, but Statlander manages to tag herself in before the Blade can make the cover. That was another really smart spot by Chris Statlander, where she saved the match by using the intergender rules. And so the Bunny has to go in, and she's of course furious, but in her rage, she doesn't see Statlander coming after her, and she lands a Big Bang Theory to get the pin and win the match for herself and Cassidy. It was a little bit of a mess here and there, especially with the rules not being strictly enforced. But again, Statlander being smart in this match was very cool to see.
Yeah, exactly. It was a cool way of showing her ring savvy, which I always like. I always like that. That different people would have different kind of levels of savviness and levels of ring experience. So it was really cool seeing that incorporated in this match.
And on top of that, this is probably the best match the Bunny has had in weeks.
Yeah.
Like, I remember that Red Velvet match, and that was a horror show. She actually looked really good here.
Yeah, definitely. I think everybody involved looked good in this one, I would say.
After that, we cut to something that pretty much flew right over my head. Throughout the episode, we kept cutting the three people in the crowd: Jorge Masvidal, Amanda Nunes, and I think it was their coach, Dan Lambert. Tony Schiavone is trying to get an interview with them when Lambert grabs the mic and cuts one of the most scathing anti-wrestling rants you've ever heard in the ring.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I don't know who this guy is, but he cut a heck of a promo here.
Yeah, you got to give it up for him. You really do. I wasn't sure who this was before, but I definitely knew Masvidal and Nunes, but yeah, this was a heck of a promo for sure.
And you know who this guy is, even if you don't know this specific person. The guy who's always like, oh, wrestling was better in my day. Terry Funk,
sure, yeah.
Jack Briscoe, rah, 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 rah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll admit, my experience of stuff probably pre-2000 even, maybe even like 98 or something, but definitely pre-2000 is severely lacking, so I really don't know much about these guys other than that they were the legends at the time. But you always have these people who are like, the new stuff is bad, stick to the old stuff, which was better. And he just does this for like not 10 minutes, but he does this for like 5 minutes straight. And it's like going on so long that's like, oh, you kind of hurting the product here by doing this for so long.
Yeah, you don't want to completely bury your own product. I feel like it's kind of an interesting decision.
But it does end very well. After hearing more than enough of this, none other than Lance Archer comes out and gives this dude a blackout slam. I don't know if this guy has any training or like was an MMA guy or anything like that, but he took a black hole slam, which hats off to the guy for doing that.
Definitely.
And Lance Archer, this is exactly what we want to see Lance Archer do. Take a bunch of jabronis and beat the crap out of them.
Yep, that's exactly what we've been asking for. It was, props to Lambert for taking a black hole slam. I mean, you got to give it up, you know.
So what do you think the point of all this was? It can't be just to get Lance Archer over.
Maybe they just saw them at the show and just came out with an angle real quick. I don't know. I mean, I don't know what the point was, but I think it ended fairly well, I would say, all things considered. But yeah, he did really bury the product for a while, which was
Well, not
interesting.
Nunez or Masvidal. They
No,
just
no,
kind of
no.
let the guy
Yeah,
go. They
right.
seemed happy to be there.
Yeah, they seemed excited. I don't know.
And after that, we get the main event, the Young Bucks versus Eddie Kingston and Penta El Zero M in a tag team title match that's also a street fight. We talked about this last time, and they kind of went with our idea. They've done singles matches for so long, and there's always been cheating and shenanigans, so why not just make it a street fight? And
Right.
honestly, great idea. This was a fantastic match.
They should hire us. I think I think they'd be in a even better shape. No, but yeah, this was my favorite match of the night. It really, I've been complaining that the Young Bucks, and not to jump ahead too much, but I've been complaining that the Young Bucks, just do the same thing every week, and even though they're good at it, this definitely added some flavor to their feud. And there's some brutal spots in this match.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely.
yeah, I mean, and just some
Well,
great
the,
storytelling, I would say.
the most brutal thing of all, though, is what happened to their faces before the match even began.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very true.
They had perfect bad guy facial hair, and now it's just gone. I don't know why they cut it off.
I think it just draws heat from some people. They see that facial hair and they're just like, what? What's going on?
But that's what you want. Like, they're going for tacky jerks.
Yes,
What could
right.
be more tacky than that?
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point. That's a really good point. I don't know why they changed it up, but maybe they just got sick of it. Maybe it's just too
Or
itchy.
maybe
Who
they thought
knows?
it would draw even more heat to take something away from us that we like.
Yeah, exactly. They went meta with it. Exactly. Yeah.
So there was a lot going on in this match. So much so that I don't think I can even remember half of it.
Sure. Yeah.
Big moves all over the place. A lot of fun spots. A lot of crunchy stuff. Probably my favorite move was when Penta El Zero M took, what was it? I think it was Matt Jackson and did a Canadian destroyer from the apron
Yep.
into a table. Ooh,
Yep.
that looked rough. Wow.
Yeah, that sure did. That was, ooh, I mean, just yeah, that was a rough spot.
And there was like one spot that I didn't like too much because it was a copy of a spot we saw last week that I didn't like too much. Where Pentel Zero M goes for a trash can, puts it right in front of his face, so of course Nick
Oh
Jackson
yeah,
kicks it into him, which is
yep,
just like what MJF and Sammy did last week. I didn't like it then. I didn't like it here. It didn't ruin anything. It was just like the one spot that didn't work for me.
it's just classic dumb baby face again, where it's just
Exactly.
like don't just hold things at waist level. Just don't hold them in front of your face, especially against the Young Bucks.
Yeah.
Definitely don't do that.
But there is kind of a storyline going there where the way that the Bucks win this time is that I feel like Eddie and Penta were resting a little bit on their laurels because what the Bucks did every time to get the advantage was outsmart them. They would do something that Eddie and Penta have done before, and they would have a response for it this time.
Yeah, I thought that was a really again, it's ring psychology, right? And it's kind of the evolution of a feud, the evolution. That's how feuds should go. In terms of okay, these wrestlers have wrestled each other a few times now. They should kind of know each other's moves and know each other's spots and adapt. And I thought that was a really cool way of doing it.
And another big spot, which it felt a little bit shoved in, but I didn't mind it because it was funny, was the Brandon Cutler cold spray spot. Matt Jackson
Yeah.
has Penta held up again to do it again. And Brandon Cutler, being smart this time, waits until he gets an actual shot in because Penta's all ducking and weaving. So, hey, he's learning as well. But Kazarian comes out and power bombs him into a table. I don't know why he didn't bother to stay there because, again, this was a no DQ match. He could do whatever the heck he wanted,
Right.
especially with the Good Brothers who eventually came out at ringside. He could have just stayed there and kept them at bay the whole time. But, he does his one spot. He's out. A little extra spot right in the middle of the match. Nothing too important to it overall, but a fun little spot there.
Yeah, definitely. I always like. I think we both are starting to like Elite Hunter Kazarian a lot, and yeah, I always like seeing him. But yeah, maybe that's to show that he's not necessarily united with people who are against the Elite, but he has his own sort of agenda and his own motives. I don't know. I'm trying to think of why he would just leave, knowing that the Good Brothers are around.
What do you think he should do next?
Kazarian?
Yeah.
That's a really good question. I mean, I think he should maybe find a partner and try to take down the Bucks. I don't know. That's one way they could go with it. I mean, because whoever the Bucks lose to, it's gonna be not Kenny Page levels, but I mean the Bucks are hateable heels as well. So that could be a good way to get Kazarian big time over and have him knock down the Elite a peg. But I don't know. What do you think?
It feels like that despite him interrupting matches for like a month now, the Elite don't even bother with him. They barely even see him. So he's got to do something to get their attention in a big way. And I think it's got to start with the Good Brothers. You don't start with the Bucks. So maybe next week he interferes in the Jon Moxley match and ensures Carl Anderson's defeat. The only problem with that is you don't want Moxley to win with any sort of screw job associated with it.
Yeah.
So maybe Gallows versus Miro. Miro's a guy you can add some screw job with, and it's not going to affect him.
Definitely. But that's a good idea.
You got to get them to notice Kazarian and to go after him instead of just poking at him from the outside.
Right. Yeah. No, I think that's a really good idea. I hope to see them do something like that, because I think it is maybe getting a little old hat for Kazarian to just kind of wander and aimlessly take down the Elite and then leave. I don't know how many times we've seen that so far.
And the match itself, Eddie Kingston gets some tax, which is always a bad idea.
Yep.
You do not go to get tax, because the only thing that's going to happen is you're going to end up eating them. In this case, literally, because the Young Bucks put a bunch of tax in his mouth, give him a super kick, and he is done. The Bucks get the win. They retain the title. Episode comes to an end.
Yeah. A pretty brutal spot to end on, but creative. you gotta give them credit for that.
Yeah, but what is it? So is this the end of Eddie Kingston and Penta? I
think it has to be, right? I mean, I don't know what else they could do. They could do a double street fight. I don't know. What else can you do? I don't know who the team is gonna be that's gonna take down the Bucks. But I don't think it's
Varsity
Penta
Blondes.
Yeah,
I'm calling it out.
Maybe.
Varsity Blondes.
Yeah, it really could be. But I don't think it's gonna be Penta and Eddie, at least not at the moment.
I guess Eddie goes back to Jon Moxley at least for next week. And are both Pac and Phoenix injured? Are they both injured?
I think Pac is fine. Is Pac hurt?
He hasn't been around for like a month, so I was wondering if he got hurt.
Oh wow, that's a good point. Yeah, I guess we haven't seen him since the last pay-per-view, right? So
I think he had a match on the show after the pay-per-view.
The show after, gotcha.
I think that was the last time we saw him, and we didn't hear a peep since then.
Wow, yeah. So that could be the case for sure. Maybe they're just saving him for something. I don't know.
So if both Pac and Phoenix are out, this might be the last time we see Penta for not long, but probably like a week or two at least.
Yeah, I would agree. I would definitely agree.
But, for the most part, this show was excellent, and I think even with my little complaints in there about the promos, they have been better than ever. And I think overall they were better than the matches itself, except for the main event. There was just a lot of great stuff going on in this episode that built towards the future, and I thought it was fantastic.
Yeah, I agree. I was really into it, and I think there's a lot going on that I'm really excited for. And obviously, the debuts this episode were pretty wild and exciting. So, especially Malachi Black. So,
definitely, I want to see him fight next week.
Forward to that.
If he doesn't fight next week, I am going to be very salty. I'm just going to say that.
Yes, I and for good reason. I want to see him wrestle again.
Okay, so that'll do it for our AEW recap. Today we have something fun that we're going to talk about. Ryan, would you like to tell the audience at home all about the $1 Million Mania at WWE Raw?
Yes, I would. So $1 Million Mania, I believe this is around 2008. Basically, ratings not great for Raw, and what they decided to do was Vince McMahon himself would be giving away $1 million a week on live television.
$1 million.
That's right. On live television, they had a glass case full of cash on the entrance stage, and he would call one lucky person.
There's so many questions already. He wasn't going to give it to them through the phone. I'm sorry. Keep going.
No, absolutely. And so yeah, he would call one lucky person and tell them that they received some money. So basically, I guess in an effort to, you would enter some kind of, I don't know if it was a website or
You
what,
would have
but
to go to the
the details are
website
fuzzy.
and
But
enter there.
yeah, yeah, and so at literally paying people to watch Raw uh, is
Paying
is
people a
certainly one way
lot
to
of money.
go. Yes. So I I don't want to jump too far to the end, which is the wildest part to me. But do you have any thoughts on Million Dollar Mania in general?
Oh boy, do I have thoughts on this. So I had heard of this at least once before, but it never really sunk in what it was until I looked into it a few days ago. So you have this rating situation, which, Raw and WWE, they're always in a rating situation. But USA was pressuring Vince to do something to boost ratings, and this is what he came up with. The general idea was, at the beginning of the show, you would get a password on the show. Throughout the episode, Vince would come periodically out with a phone, make a phone call, and if you were the lucky person on the other end, if you said the password, you would get the money. So there's a lot of things wrong with this. First of all, the idea from the ground up was bad. It's either supposed to be a game show, or it's like one of those radio things where be the 10th caller in line and win a gift card or something like that. And this doesn't follow either format well and ends up missing what they're even supposed to do. Now, considering what the project ended up looking like, the radio show style giveaway I think is close to what they were going for. First and foremost, you do not have to be watching the show at the time to win. You listen for the password, and you don't have to be watching the show to get a phone call. You don't have to be doing anything to get a phone call. Just know what the password is, and just sit around your phone for 2 hours waiting for the phone call. So you're losing. There's no incentive for someone to stick around who wasn't already going to be sticking around.
Right.
And on top of that, okay, so here are things that WWE Raw has that a radio show does not. Television cameras, a live audience, an expectation to see wrestling. You have an audience of millions watching this. Next to none of them are going to be participating in this contest. And from what I could tell, it wasn't quick, as Vince just stood there with his phone, calling people. He would get answering machines, confuse people. He would get upset at his own inability to use a phone. And occasionally, someone would answer and win some money. At one point, he got someone whose voicemail was Rick Astley's Never Gonna Give You Up. Yeah, I'm sure USA's lawyers love that bit.
Oh, I'm sure, yeah.
And on a small radio show, you can get away with this kind of thing where you put something out and people who are listening will wait to get the call to call in and stuff like that. But you're not, with a show like this, you're taking time away from what's supposed to be the thing people are here for to cater to an incredibly small audience. Like, even if I think the number was 1.5 million people had registered on the website for this. Raw was already getting an average of 3 to 4 million viewers each show. So that's even a small if it was just people who watched the show already, that's only a fraction of them who had entered this contest.
Right. Yeah. This is all making sense to me. Yeah.
Right. So when you're weighing the cost of people you'll lose who don't care about the contest versus those who do care and are tuning in to see it, I don't think the math checks out, and the ratings more or less confirm this. For those watching who didn't expect to win, there's just nothing there. There's just nothing there to enjoy about it, which is what they could have learned from game shows. You don't watch a game show so that you can win. You watch it so that you can see other people win. Because it's fun. Because there's spectacle, high emotions, and a chance at even schadenfreude. You want to imagine yourself there and think of what you'd do if you were in that position. What are you even imagining when you're watching this? That you'll get a random phone call from an angry old man and then have to say a corporate catchphrase at him? He's also giving away way too much money for all of this. I looked into it. The most anyone has ever won in a single game of Jeopardy is about $77,000. That's a show that runs a full half hour and gets darn good ratings. And even a show with higher possible prizes like Wheel of Fortune and Deal or No Deal, where they do have a chance of getting $1 million, rarely do they have to end up paying the kind of money that Vince is just throwing out there with no fanfare and zero interest from the crowd. And the thing is...
Yeah.
And
Yeah, no, keep going, please.
And on top of this, all of this, everything I've just said is if everything went swimmingly, which it did not. Because there is one other aspect to this kind of audience participation that they didn't even bother with. You watch any sort of competent game show, and there's a screening process that is done well before the contestant gets on the stage. You do one of those call-in shows like Total Request Live. I don't even know if that's a thing anymore. But whenever you call into these kinds of things, you're going to talk to a producer or something first who will tell you what to do, not to swear, all that stuff. This was cold calling people live who could be doing anything at the time and could say anything on national television. Again, we mentioned the not going to give you up part. And the fact is that most of them aren't prepared, and it just didn't make for good television. Now, some of them definitely were, and you get a bit of the warm, fuzzy feeling when someone is overjoyed about getting a life-changing amount of money. And honestly, despite all the nonsense surrounding this, I can't exactly hate it because it did do some good. Much like when MoviePass crashed and burned the way that it did, it ended up being a good thing for a lot of people because they got to see a lot of movies on the cheap. And there were a lot of people who got a lot of money out of this at Vince McMahon's expense.
Oh yeah, sorry. I was just I was enthralled. Yeah, I mean, you nailed it. It was. I think comparing it to a game show is a really interesting idea because it's just game shows usually have, not that Vince McMahon isn't charismatic, not that Vince McMahon isn't an entertaining person, but him just getting mad at people on the phone, and it's just like what's the entertaining part of it? And imagine being in the crowd for this. Like, that's what I was thinking the whole time, is like just being in the crowd for this $1 Million Mania and just I mean, I think this lasted for 3 weeks.
3 weeks.
Yeah, and just knowing that Vince is going to come out at any second and just bring the show to a grinding halt is that'd be too much for me as an audience member. But I mean, the thing that really gets me about this is, in classic WWE fashion, especially in the 2000s, they can't just end anything normally.
Nope.
They have to end it in the most ridiculous way possible and have the set, for no apparent reason, collapse on Vince McMahon and have the entire crowd wonder if this man is still alive. There's something about Vince where he loves putting himself in fake danger. I don't know why, because he blew himself up in a limo once. He's done all these sorts of things, and I don't know why, and I don't know what the point of this was besides to create buzz, right? To create publicity, because wrestling truly is, more than any other industry, any publicity is good publicity, and I think that was the point here. But it's just such, and it didn't lead to any, like, obviously with the benefit of hindsight, but it was just the set collapsed and then that was it, and then they kept going with the shows throughout the weeks. So it's just, I don't know. I remember Triple H was there, and he was like trying to dig Vince out. It just, the whole thing was so ridiculous.
I can't feel my legs.
Oh yeah. Oh my goodness. Yeah. It's just truly ridiculous, and they couldn't just be like, okay, we're ending this. They had to have the literal stage collapse onto him. What'd you think about this ending to $1 Million Mania?
Now, I am actually going to defend Vince McMahon in this sense, but let's put that on hold for just a moment. Just
Sure.
to clarify, what we're talking about is the video where all of this we talked about so far is to build up to the video that we watched this week, which was the end of the $1 Million Mania. On the third night, Vince McMahon was doing his shtick, answering calling people, "You won so much money, ha ha ha." And at some point, a lighting fixture fell from the ceiling. And Vince is like, "Ooh, that's not good." And then all of a sudden, there's this sign that's next to him with his face on like $1 million bill or something, and it falls over, crushing Vince, so that he gets dragged out of there on a stretcher, ending the $1 Million Mania. You can tell when WWE has no confidence or faith in something, or even they realize it's a big mistake with how they upload the video. The video that they uploaded is so edited. Like we talked about the Ricky Starks thing earlier being overly edited. This is edited to the max. I think it's like footage over all 3 days of this where he's just the best calls they could scrounge up. They got graphics, they got music, they got the good moments and all that. And then when the bad stuff starts happening, ominous music. The
Right.
video washes out a bit, and they cut to so many angles because the original footage did not look as good. They even cut away when the thing fell because it wasn't crushing Vince McMahon. When you saw it originally, he was clearly not even close to that thing, but they cut it in such a way so it looked like it hit him.
Yeah.
So even they know that this was bad and was not going to work. But I will defend Vince in one sense. If you're that kind of character, I don't know if he ever really wanted to be Mr. McMahon, because from what I understand, he wanted people to understand why he did the Canadian screw job and wanted people to think Bret Hart was a bad guy, but eventually just caved in and became Mr. McMahon, which he ended up loving doing from what I understand. But if you are going to be a bad guy, you don't want to go out, like you want to have some spectacle in that. Like say, Ryan, that you were in a movie. You were in the next Mission Impossible movie. Yeah. Do you want Tom Cruise to just punch you and you fall over? Or do you want to be, like, kicked out of an airplane, exploded, and all that stuff?
Oh, for sure. The second one.
Yeah. So he has the resources and the creative drive that I can see why he would want to do, like, a fake death storyline. That's one of the few things about Vince McMahon that really does make sense to me. If you're in that position, wouldn't you want to be in an exploding car at least once? So, and on top of that, I'm sure he wanted to do it this way because it goes to the, I'm the bad guy, so I gotta go out in fashion, brother. Does he say brother? Yeah. I don't know what he said. Pal. I think he says pal. But it was also clearly a rush job to get him out of there so that he didn't have to spend any more money. Because overall, he spent about $3 million on this stunt, which was less than he spent purchasing WCW. And he probably could have hired a bunch of really talented wrestlers to help the product out more than whatever the heck this was supposed to be. Still, all that said, it's an interesting chapter in wrestling history, if nothing else.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, and I distinctly, for whatever it's worth, I distinctly remember watching this when it happened. So it definitely was memorable at the very least.
Now let me ask you this. Mm-hmm. What would you do if you had to put some sort of fan interaction component, a game show of sorts in the middle of a show like this? How would you have done a ratings boosting thing like this? What would you have done differently?
That's a good question. I mean, it makes sense to have people sign up online, right? That's the way you can kind of track who wants to be involved. But maybe involve the matches. Like maybe if Triple H versus John Cena, Group A falls under Triple H and Group B falls under John Cena. And, if you're in Group A, you're rooting for Triple H to win. It just kind of adds some kind of spice to the matches themselves and involves the matches as opposed to just watching Vince walk out and, call someone random. I mean, he could still do that if he really wanted to, but it kind of adds some spice to the matches, I would say. How about you?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely because the $1 Million Mania has literally nothing to do with wrestling. There's no wrestling component in it. Occasionally they would drag someone out there to stand next to Vince, but it didn't have anything to do with the matches that were taking place. It had nothing to do with the show. It was completely separate from it. And I think you're on the right track there. If it was me, and this probably isn't even a good idea, but working with what you have to, I think you would definitely have a call-in hotline. You would have people call in at the beginning of the show, screen them, obviously. That would be the main thing. Make sure you screen them first. And you put them on the air right before a match starts, to predict who will win. And hey, if they get it right, give them a $50 gift card to the company store or something like that. Because it doesn't have to be $1 million bribes or anything like that. And you get, you can convince people to come on, not so much for the money, but just for, hey, my name is blank and I'm from this, and I'll tell you what, this guy is going to kick butt and I think he's going to win. That's the kind of thing that people want in a game show, is just as much as winning the prizes itself, their personality, them being winners on screen. So you give that to them, at least in that small way. And of course, with wrestling, everything's scripted. I'm sure you're probably going to end up giving out more money than not. But again, that's why you keep it low to like gift cards on the website. You don't give a person $200,000 just because they answered a phone.
Exactly. It involves wrestling more than what they did. So I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and you know what? I can't wait to see if AEW does their own. I want to see them do the $1 Million Mania thing. That would be amazing.
Sure.
Cody Rhodes up there calling people. He would at least have a bit more Vince has a certain kind of charisma, but Cody has definitely a better phone charisma, if that makes sense.
Yes,
he'd be a better person to have call you.
Yes.
You get a better reaction
absolutely.
talking to him than you would. You get better reaction out of someone talking to him than someone talking to Vince, who's just kind of grumpy the whole time.
I totally agree. I would feel much more comfortable talking to Cody Rhodes than Vince McMahon for sure. Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that'll do it for this episode of the Phenomenal Wrestling Podcast. We'll be back again next week. Whatever news is out there, another episode of AEW Dynamite, and at some point we will be covering Money in the Bank?
Yeah,
should be a fun show.
This Sunday.
But in any case, until next time, keep watching wrestling and keep being phenomenal.